Yeah, well, so I mean, there's several things you can do to test soils. I mean, you can get DIY kits from garden centres, but they're always going to be a little bit of inaccurate compared to a laboratory test. So I think some of the key factors that you can test for would be soil pH. So that would tell you whether it's an acid or an alkaline soil, and it might range from sort of 5 up to about 8.5 to 9, and 9 would be a really alkaline soil, and 5 would be a really acidic soil. And the importance of that is, if you had a really, really acidic soil, what happens is the soil, due to what's going on in terms of the cation exchange capacity within that soil, it doesn't hold on to nutrients very well. So you might well be applying fertiliser thinking I've put enough feed down to supply my lawn with the nutrients it needs for the season. But if the pH is really low, then it's not going to hold on to those nutrients, and those nutrients are going to be washed out of the profile. On the other side of the coin, if you had too high a pH soil, the opposite is in effect, because what happens is, once again, just to do with the cation exchange capacity within that soil, you'll find a high pH soil will lock up nutrients. So once again, you're applying nutrients to the soil, and then the soil colloids hold on to it and don't allow the grass to feed from it. So it's really important to get that balance right, because you think you're doing the right thing and applying the right nutrients as prescribed by the garden centre or whatever you've read, that you should be the right nutrients you should be applying, but you might find that the grass then isn't able to get those nutrients because the chemical imbalance is wrong in the soil. So it's really important to get the pH right. And the question was asked earlier, if you've got an alkaline soil, how do you make it slightly more acidic? Whether you apply sulphur, and if you've got a really acidic soil, you want to make it more alkaline, then you apply lime, but you'd have to do that on an annual basis, because it will just buffer back to its original pH that it wants to be at. So that's one really important thing about doing a soil test. Secondly, you can test for nutrient levels like phosphates, potassium, magnesium, and all the other nutrients that you want to test for. You can't test for nitrogen, because that's fluctuating on a day-to-day basis, because it sits there in soil solution, and it could be different from one day to the next, depending on what rainfall you've had. But certainly for testing for phosphate and potash, you can then devise the right fertilizer program to make sure that you're correcting any problems you've got within your soil. So there's a whole subject on its own talking about soil science, but it's a great question, because it's really, really important. If you haven't got the right stuff going on underneath the ground, you're not going to grow a good lawn on the surface.